There's a chance an Illinois starter may not make it to campus by the time the season starts. What then? Locked on Illini. Let's go.
You are Locked on Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked on Illini. Thank you once again for making us your first listen every single day. Simple reminder, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. My name is Sonny Verma. If you want to mingle back and forth, you can find me on Twitter at IlliniCast. If you want to support the show, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Just a friendly reminder, I'm here every single day trying to give you some Illini content. Today's show should be an interesting one. We're going to be talking about Tomislav Ivisic, one of the freshmen coming in, 21 years old, but a freshman nonetheless. There's talk that he hasn't made it on campus yet, and a lot of people remember what went on with his brother, Zvonimir Tomislav, who was the center for Kentucky last year, and I believe he followed Calipari to Arkansas this year. And Zvonimir didn't get a chance to get on the court until December of last year. And so folks are wondering if this could be the case for Tomislav. Now, Tomislav obviously is slated to be the Illini starting center in the upcoming season. 7'1", big boy. A guy who's got a lot of experience playing in Europe, who is hopefully going to have a minimal adjustment period coming here to the Big Ten, facing off against the physicality that we have here, mainly because he's already been dealing with it over in Europe. So is this a cause of concern? From what I've gathered, not really. Some of the more prominent insiders suggest that Tomislav should be here by about July. I believe Derek Piper reported that. I don't have a timeline, so I'm basing it on that. But I did want to remind the folks that when Zvonimir had these issues last year, it was worked out by one of the guys on his coaching staff, Orlando Antigua. Well, guess who's on the coaching staff of our team this year? It's Orlando Antigua. If there's someone who knows how to dot the I's, to cross the T's, it's Orlando. And so I'm sure, personally, I'm not quite as worried about him not making it onto campus by the time that summer workouts are over. But just for fun, I did want to kind of explore a worst case scenario. And if Tomislav can't make it until December, or, worst case, the entire season, how would the Illini basketball team look? And I'm going to tell you, I don't think it would be the biggest loss in the world. Now, granted, I'm prefacing that by saying we are a better team with Tomislav here. But with Tomislav not being here, then you take a look at the remaining big men that we're going to have on the team. We have Kerry Booth, obviously the former 4-star that we got from Notre Dame. We're going to have Ben Hummerkaus, who I'm assuming is going to start at the 4 spot. We have Jason Jaxtis, who's a freshman who I don't think is going to be playing this year. I think it's the young kid from Yorkville. I think everyone understands that he's probably going to redshirt. But we have the wild card here, and that's Morez Johnson. Morez Johnson, obviously being 6'9", and he just made it on campus. And if you didn't know that, you just got to follow the Illini social media team. They just released a video showing him working out. And again, the guy looks big. The guy looks like he's ready to go. Obviously, he had a very promising showing at the FIBA tournament a couple weeks ago in Argentina. And I really think that right now, as is, I see Hummerkaus starting at the 4, and I see Ivisic starting at the 5. And then you cycle in Morez and you cycle in Kerry Booth to split up the minutes, let's just say. If Ivisic is gone, I almost wonder, and I'm curious on your guys' thoughts, because I know if you're watching this, you know all about Morez Johnson, and there's plenty of hype coming in with the former Mr. Illinois. Would you start him at 5? 6'9" is kind of big enough. I'm not sure if I would. I think you would probably have to start the season with Kerry Booth at the 5. But if Tomislav was absent for a extended period of time, I think it would just be a matter of time, maybe even by conference play, where Morez Johnson would show the skills needed to eventually supplant him as starter. I've been saying that in my ideal scenario in my head, Morez Johnson would average about 20 minutes a game this year. Not quite averaging double figures, but maybe like a 6-4 type of stat line, which is probably underwhelming compared to what a lot of the fans are hoping for and what probably he thinks. But keep in mind, I tend to be more on the pessimistic side. I like to say I keep myself level. I like to be pleasantly surprised as opposed to disappointed. But from what I saw of Morez at the tournament and just the vibes I'm getting, I haven't talked to anyone on the coaching staff or anything like that. So, take this with a grain of salt. But Morez is genuinely, I think, a freshman that is being most slept on in the Big Ten. Obviously, the guys out at Rutgers, they're getting most of the attention, which completely makes sense. You're talking about two of the top 3 freshmen in the country. But I think Morez and the way he's going to fit on this Illinois team is going to surprise a lot of people. I watched a little bit of the Sleepers episode. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before. And they talked about the same Morez video that I mentioned earlier. And Greg actually said that he thought that Morez could average about 24, 26 minutes as a baseline. I don't see that happening. We just have to be reminded that Morez is still a freshman. And while he might be a big guy, Hansberry was a big guy. And he had an adjustment period last year, which we all saw. Now, Morez has an X factor in the sense that he's got a motor that seemingly never shuts off. So through sheer effort, I really think that he can have a lot more playing time than Hansberry had last year. But at the same time, I'll repeat myself. He's a freshman, and freshmen are going to make mistakes. Kerry Booth had a decent year last year at Notre Dame, but my friends at Notre Dame, weren't exactly heartbroken that he was gone. I think obviously he's got NBA potential and he's got intriguing potential. So I think he can start in the Big Ten in the middle. I think you would have to next to Hummerkaus, but I think it would only be a matter of time before Morez Johnson would take over. Alongside those two, you would have, as I mentioned before, Kylan Boswell at point guard. You'd assume, is it Jacques Jonas at shooting guard? Ty Rogers, Trey White. I mean, by Sunday, Will Riley may have committed here. So it's going to be interesting how you make the rest of the lineup. But the bottom line is, if you take a look at our roster, really the only 2 guys that I don't see getting much playing time this year, and this is under the assumption that Will Riley commits to the Illini on Sunday. I don't know. Haven't received any official news or word by any stretch, but as of right now, I still feel pretty confident that he's going to commit to the Illini. So putting him on the roster, there's only 2 guys that I can't see having some meaningful playing time next year. And that's Jaxtis, who I mentioned, and also Jake Davis, who, while he can shoot the rock, I just don't know if he's quite ready to play at the Big Ten level yet. I can see him being kind of a practice guy who is going to be ready to step into a more major role 2 seasons from now. So the idea, if Ivisic is gone for an extended amount of times, will hurt the team. Don't get me wrong. But I'm going to be optimistic. And the idea that a guy like Morez Johnson will probably get more run time on the court could ultimately be a good thing for the Illini. Now, having said that, just keep in mind this was more so just a thought exercise. I'm not even the least bit worried about him not making it onto campus in time for the basketball season. Obviously, we have a history with his brother, but until some of the guys more in the know are worried, I'm not going to be worried. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but Illinois just seems to have a lot of players that are going to be worthy of playing time. But that's not for you or I to figure out. That's why Brad Underwood is one of the highest paid coaches in college basketball. And I do think that despite having probably 10 players worthy of being on the court next year, ultimately we're going to have an 8 at max 9-man rotation. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. The NBA draft is less than a week away, and this year, Illinois doesn't exactly have that many prospects that are going to be considered, but we obviously have one in Tanner Shannon Jr., and now that his ruling has come across as a not guilty verdict, you see him kind of popping up on mock drafts a little bit more often, and so I noticed an article by The Athletic, I believe it was Darnell Mayberry, who talked about him actually visiting the local Chicago Bulls. And so I want some insight on that. And there's no better person to bring on than my next guest, Haize from Locked On Bulls. How are you doing, sir?
What's going on, Sonny? Thanks for having me.
Of course. Haize, if you don't mind, let the crowd know where, because you're a busy man on YouTube. Where else can they find you?
Of course, Locked On Bulls. You can find me 5 days a week over on Locked On Bulls. I'm 7 days a week over at Chicago Bulls Central. And then if you guys are Bears fans, I have Chicago Bears Central as well. It's a lot of shows. Chicago Sky Central, which is popping now. Like it's a lot going on, man. It's crazy.
No, you're killing it. You're killing it. So, Haize, obviously, like I said, the draft is less than a week away, and we can talk about other potential guys that the Bulls might pick a little bit later, but I kind of wanted to focus on Shannon Jr. Now, I have my opinions, but I also come with a slight hint of bias. So I'm going to ask you. You obviously saw that the Bulls did work Terrence out a couple days ago. What were your thoughts when you saw that?
I mean, I always question if the Bulls would, only because AK does not typically go for anyone, free agents, trades, anything that has any type of character concerns around them. So for the Bulls to bring in Terrence Shannon Jr. Tells me that not only with the case going away, the not guilty verdict, but they've done their own personal research. I would like to, just from what I know about the team, have done that. But I like it. I think Terrence Shannon Jr. could fit a lot of the Bulls' needs, actually. And even though he's a little bit older player in this draft, I still think he has tremendous upside. It could end up actually being one of the better players to come out of this draft, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I agree. I think, obviously this is not considered a great NBA draft this year, but I think by taking Terrence, you can at least lock in a guy that you know is going to play in the league for 5 to 10 years. He may or may not be a star, but he's not a guy who I think is going to be flaming out, after his rookie contract. If anything else, you're getting a guy, he's going to be 24 by the time the season starts. You're getting a guy who's going to be in his prime. You're talking about 24 to 27 years old under a rookie contract. So, for a team, especially a team that's probably contending or looking to contend, when you're talking about like pure value wise, he could be a guy that could, work out for an NBA team. So just kind of curious. So you talked about Shannon being a fit on the Bulls. Where do you think he would fit? Like what kind of role?
I as a scorer right away, I think his ability to score and his off-ball defense, like I think the thing that people don't talk about as much, I know he's not a great on-ball defender, But he is somebody who does give effort defensively, and because of that, I can see him fitting in, maybe even being a starter, like you said, but scoring, shooting. His 3-point shooting really came along a lot, but even outside of that, he is somebody who can create their own shot. The Bulls need players like that, especially if Zach LaVine is traded this offseason, and if DeMar DeRozan does walk, if the Bulls can't get him another contract. Terrence Shannon Jr. makes sense for the Bulls. I think even as a bench scorer, he makes a whole lot of sense. But if you lose one to both of those guys this offseason, he makes even more sense for me for the Bulls in that case, just in my opinion. So
no, that makes sense. Yeah, I think with Zach leaving, then it probably makes more sense just because Terrence in a year or two could probably be flipped. This league has become so 3-and-D oriented. I think, Terrence has got the size, 6'7", 6'8", depending on who you're talking to. He's built like an NBA player already. He has been looking like a man-child when playing against other college athletes. I just wonder, with the Bulls, I guess, as an Illinois fan, it would be fun to see Ayo and Terrence Shannon on the same exact team. But if I'm thinking selfishly in the fact that I want Terrence Shannon to succeed, I think he's probably better off playing for a veteran team like a Boston. Obviously they just won the title, but being a role player, I think Terrence would fit pretty well with like a team like Minnesota. Adding another guy to Edwards who can try to just throw another physical wing, which they desperately needed against Dallas in the playoffs last year. But enough about Terrence Shannon Jr. You are a Bulls fan. I'm a Bulls fan. So who else do you think the Bulls should be kind of looking out for in the draft?
I mean, I have my list. Like Khalil Ware has become one of my favorite players in this draft. I think when you look at where the modern big man is going, he brings all of that. The ability to be a lob threat. He can run up and down the court, which we've always been looking for somebody to run with Ayo. The shot blocking, the ability to make threes. And I love the fact that he hits it at an efficient clip, but he doesn't take a whole lot of them. I don't want my center to be a 3-point shooter. I want my center to be somebody that can hit 3-point shots if needed, right? The one thing that Khalil Ware I think doesn't bring consistently that you see a more modern big man do is his ability to pass. But with the guards that we have, I'm not too worried about him like needing to create or do anything like that. I think Khalil Ware brings a lot of what the Bulls need. And then another player that I've really come around on during this whole draft process is Tajon Saloon. I think that he has the upside to be maybe the best player in this draft overall if he develops the way that it looks like he can. He has the raw skill to be a point forward, ability, shown already some ability to create his own shot. He's active defensively, but those are probably my two favorite players in this draft. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like the Bulls are going to go either direction, but those are two of my favorites right now.
If you were them, would you try to trade up?
No, because I think that one of those two players are going to be there at number 11. This isn't a draft where, to me, that there's much separation as far as upside. This is a draft that a lot of players have high floors that you think at the bare minimum they're going to be solid, like you said with TSJ, that they be in the league 5 to 8 years, maybe even longer than that. So to me, no, I wouldn't want to spend the assets to trade up in this type of draft. Not that. I think the whole weak draft labels get thrown too easily around, because when experts say that the draft is weak, they mean for the superstar talent. The 2020 draft was labeled the weakest draft in the last 5 years. And when you look at that, I think that draft's produced already a few all-stars and about 8 to 10 players that are solid starters. So like, it's not that it's devoid of talent. It's just that it doesn't have the talent that projects to be superstars. And that's fine. You can still find really solid players that can help your team for years and years to come in this draft.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I meant too. When I look at this draft compared to previous ones, I just don't know who the superstar is going to be.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of good NBA players. We talked about Shannon. I think Castle has a really high ceiling who can shock a lot of people. Before I let you go, I did kind of bring his name up, and as did you. Well, I'm just curious, where does Ayo Dosunmu fit in the future of the Chicago Bulls?
I mean, I think as right now he's the starting 2 guard. I think he's earned that with the way that he played and finished out last season. Him and Kobe have always had really good chemistry. If you go back to Ayo Dosunmu's rookie year, when him and Kobe were both coming off the bench before Lonzo went down, they were developing really good chemistry there. Io eventually gets thrust into the starting point guard role, but I think that there's enough overlap between their skill sets and enough where they cover up each other's weaknesses as well that can be a starting backcourt for you. Now, I think you have to fill out some things other places, but I think either way, Io is either going to be the starting shooting guard next to Kobe, or he's going to be your first guard off the bench. And I think Io showed last year enough reason to remind everybody why, after his rookie year, we saw so much promise in who Io DeSumo could be.
Well, if you are a Bulls fan, once again, Haize is the guy to pay attention to. I'll have both the links to his pages in the description of the show. Haize, thank you so much for joining me today.
All right, thank you, Sonny.
Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Now, before we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Illini, I did want to go through my comment section a little bit because there was something that kind of jumped out at me from yesterday's episode that maybe I wasn't quite clear enough on. And this is Kevo, Uptown Chicago. What's up, Sonny? Kevin here. I want to push back a little bit about a potential Arkansas matchup next season. It's better than this year's team, in my opinion. We're in a more visible era with social media and today's youth and guys who want to play on the biggest stages, networks, primetime, and if we can win some of these games, it goes a long way with the recruiting. I love what Brad is doing, and if we don't make that Elite Eight run, who knows if we would get Will or Jasper Johnson on campus. They want the bright lights, and you get that by playing high-profile games. Let's play anybody, anywhere. Kevin, thank you so much for watching. I do really appreciate that comment. And I just want to say I do agree with you. I think when I mentioned what I did yesterday, I meant in the sense where my confidence level on winning these particular games coming up this year. I'm glad we're playing them. Don't get me wrong. Being on TV in the national spotlight, playing against these blue blood programs is an absolute good thing for the Illinois, for Illinois Fighting Illini. I just don't know how confident I am, at least in the early stages of winning these games. I know Duke we're going to be playing in February, and by then we should have things going pretty smoothly at that point, hopefully. But thank you, Kevin, for making a comment. And, all of you, I really appreciate all of you in that chat section. I promise I'm paying attention every single day. If you have a question, leave it. If there's a particular storyline you want me to catch up on, or discuss, let me know. This show is your show. If you can do me one big favor, if you're listening to this via podcast, go to your favorite podcast app and rate me 5 stars. We don't have as many votes as I was hoping we would have at this point. Everything else has been fantastic. YouTube, you guys are killing it. Killing it. Audio downloads, you guys are killing it. The only thing I'm kind of lacking right now is the feedback via the star rating. So do me a favor, give me that 5-star rating, whether it's on Spotify, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, regardless of whatever platform you're using. If you can do me one favor this week, and it should only take you a couple seconds, just hit that 5-star button. Thank you again. Tomorrow's going to be Friday, and we're going to have another fun episode with you with Kent, Casual Big Ten. We're going to be talking about Jasper Johnson, another 5-star recruit who's going to be coming to visit on Monday. I've got some thoughts, and I'm sure Kent has his thoughts. So tomorrow's going to be a fun episode. It's the Friday episode. Those are always the most fun. We'll see you then. ILL. Love you guys.